that wonderful introduction. And I think the times that we shared at LVP are the most memorable in my life so far. And once again, thank you very much, Dr. Sonu sir, and the AIOS Scientific Committee for this kind invitation. I'd like to acknowledge the contributions of my colleagues, Dr. Samresh and Dr. Vaishali, in creating this presentation. At the outset, we do receive research grant support from Alcon Laboratories, but has no relevance to this presentation. So after all the brilliant surgeries by the previous speakers, I'm going to show not so much brilliant surgeries which end up in iatrogenic complications. So this was a case which apparently seemed to be going off quite well after chopping. Fragment removal was being attempted. The first fragment was being removed, and you can see not a very dense cataract, grade 2, grade 3 kind of a cataract. The eyeball, if you notice, is just moving a little bit up and down, but the surgeon seems to be doing quite well. After having removed the first couple of fragments, this was noticed, which retrospectively in the video, with the surgeon didn't notice and went ahead with the fragment removal. The centration also not being great, so probably visualization or attention was not being paid at that point of time. So you have this nice little iatrogenic hole or in the capsule that has already been created with three-fourth of the nucleus still in place. And the first thing that we want to do in this situation is not to pull out the instruments. So keep noticing the foot pedal here. We go back to foot. Now you go back to foot pedal one. Then make sure that you inject dispersive viscoelastic before you withdraw your phaco probe, so that the chamber doesn't shallow. So we will all encounter this complication, if not in such a simple case, maybe in a more difficult case. And the most important thing is to keep calm and not to panic and not to withdraw the instruments. Once that is done, now we need to assess the extent of the posterior capsule rupture, identify whether vitreous is already present in the chamber or not, and also start preparing. Keep telling your OT assistants to start preparing, keep looking for the backup three-piece IOL, which may, or a scleral fixated IOL, which may be needed eventually in this case. Like Professor Chi showed, triamcinolone is of extreme importance in diagnosing the presence or looking for the presence of vitreous. And very often we feel
When
there
the
is no
vitreous
vitreous
phase
is
is
not
disrupted,
present in the chamber, but when you actually stain, you do find vitreous coming even as close to the main port or the side port. The second question is when to do vitrectomy. Do you try and remove most of the nucleus? Do you try and delay it up to the cortex removal? Are you fearful that if I do vitrectomy now the nucleus will drop? The answer is we need to address the vitreous whenever you notice it. So it could be in the beginning of the surgery before starting the case, it could be in the middle of the case, it could be at the end of nucleus removal. So you have to address it as and when it is required. And one thing that we always forget is that we always feel that this nucleus is just, in the area of PCR. There's only little bit of vitreous. Let me first go and remove that with the phaco probe. Otherwise, it will drop. But what we forget in that, while in trying to attempt that, is the tremendous amount of vitreoretinal traction that we are causing at the vitreous base. So it may not appear to be causing too much of problem, and you may feel that you have gotten away with that. But what the consequences it leaves behind to the periphery of the retina is something only our retinal colleagues would be able to tell us. So it's something that should never be attempted, that if you find a fragment sitting on a PCR or sitting in wrapped with vitreous, don't go with the phaco probe to try and remove it. And this is an excellent video shared by my vitreoretinal colleague to show why we should never do that. This is a drop nucleus, and notice how much it is entangled all around by the vitreous. And think of it as if you would go and attack this with a phaco probe. Think of the amount of damage that we are going to cause to the peripheral vitreoretinal base. So therefore, it's very, very important that we first address the vitreous before actually thinking about touching the nucleus. Now, the second goal of now having decided to do vitrectomy, the goal is to prevent acute intraoperative vitreoretinal traction and salvage the eye, and not to try and salvage the sinking lens material anyhow. So if it drops, follow the bye-bye technique, let it go and let our colleagues take care of it. They can do a much better job than what we can do. Uh, As an anterior segment surgeon, our goal is to prevent further enlargement of the PCR and try and provide a symmetrical scaffold. And we have two approaches to do that, the limbal being the more familiar to us. But this beautiful animation experiment by my colleague Dr. Samresh showed that when you actually do a vitrectomy from the limbal approach, you tend to pull in more vitreous from below, actually enlarging the tear. Versus when you drain the vitreous from the pars plana approach, you are actually attacking it from where it's coming out. So you are draining it from that hole. So there are you're not actually pulling up on more vitreous and lesser chances of the posterior capsular enlargement. And also it allows for more symmetrical vitreous removal. With the limbal vitrectomy, ergonomically, it's almost impossible to remove symmetrical vitreous from around the posterior capsule tear, and therefore you would have pockets of more vitreous on one side or less vitreous on the other side, which can lead to tilting of the bag and eventually of the IOL. And compare that to the pars plana approach, where you have great ergonomic access all around to remove vitreous symmetrically or all around the posterior capsule tear. So coming back to our case, the first thing that we want to do is to stain this area with triamcinolone, and sure enough there was plenty of vitreous which had already prolapsed into the anterior chamber. We prefer going through a trocar because that will allow ease of frequent removal and insertion of the vitrector, but you need not necessarily need a trocar. And notice how this entire bulk of vitreous has drained beautifully. So I'll just replay that. Notice this chunk of vitreous has drained down beautifully through that posterior capsule tear. Now the connection of this to the anterior segment has been severed, and now you go ahead and do symmetrical, try and do some vitrectomy even around that posterior capsule tear for symmetrical removal. Once you have done that, then we go ahead with phacoemulsification, and believe me, it is safer to do phacoemulsification with the nucleus still remaining after a vitrectomy done rather than without a vitrectomy done. And to do that, I think Dr. Osher's video many years ago was one of the best videos to show why a nucleus drops. And if it's wrapped with vitreous, it's going to drop much, the chances of it dropping are much faster compared to if it is clean and away from the vitreous cavity. So maintain a very low flow rate. We used a flow rate of about 12 cc per minute, and we could manage to remove the vitreous, I mean the nucleus, without a drop in the of the fragment. Cortical removal was done, and now what we are doing is we are doing trying to remove symmetrical vitreous from all around this large posterior capsular tear, to try and make sure that there are no unequal pockets remaining on any other side. So you can notice how easy it is to manipulate or maneuver this probe all around. These strands that you see are dispersive viscoelastic. They usually don't go away as easily, and some will remain, but that's fairly okay. With such a large posterior capsule tear, it's there is no question of an in the bag IOL, and the best way to go ahead to deal with this is to use a multi-piece or a three-piece IOL. And if the anterior capsule rhexis is intact, the best way to stabilize this lens is to place the haptics in the sulcus, make sure that the leading haptic goes in the sulcus, and then once that is achieved, you just buttonhole the optic through the anterior capsular rhexis, the anterior optic capture. This will do two things. This will make sure that the bulk of the optic is away from the iris, so less chances of uveal irritation, pigment dispersion, and macular edema. And also this will lock the three-piece IOL in place, therefore less chances of decentration and anything happening. In the end, of course, it's always a good idea to suture such wounds and always reconfirm in the end for presence of any vitreous by injecting triamcinolone even at the last part or at the end of surgery. There was no further vitreous disturbance in this case, and wound hydration goes without saying. This is the patient about more than 6 months post-op, well-centered three-piece captured through the anterior capsular rhexis. It goes without saying, a very detailed peripheral retinal evaluation from time to time is required by your vitreoretinal colleague, and keep doing repeated OCTs. These patients are at a higher chance of developing post-operative cystoid macular edema. So the main hesitation that all of us have while dealing with the PCR and doing vitrectomy, particularly with the pars plana approach, is to how do I adapt? It's a mental block that we have. Remember, it's just about 2-3 millimeters away from where you are entering your probe, even otherwise. interact with your colleagues, interact with your retinal colleagues, see videos, talk with them, observe how they do. And I think once we get over that mental block, this approach surely helps to improve outcomes in an unforeseen situation like this. So with that, I would like to end my presentation, and thank you so much for the patient listening.